Hi, welcome everyone. This is dubiel here. I will be your host today and we'll be discussing a wonderful topic of Shireen. And before we sink into our topic and I share with you what we're going to do, let me play a video what Nkosi Talk Show is all about. And I hope it's going to work. let me.
Welcome to Nkosi Talk Shows. Lead from within.
Find your own voice.
Challenges we have had to overcome in 2020.
Find your own voice.
The world has become united by the unseen, knowing there are no guarantees for tomorrow.
Lead from within.
Find your own voice.
Let the world hear your voice and be filled with it.
For the day has come for you to be a great leader.
The time has come to break away from the pain, distraction, experience the unthinkable. Sorry. Right. So let's do it. Let's crack on. So today's topic is how to strategically maintain a positive mindset. And we have a wonderful expert today, Ms. Shireen Logrove, with Sovereignty Coaching. Can you please just share a little bit of information about yourself with the audience?
Thank you, Nadia, and thank you for having me. Hi, everybody, wherever you are in the world. So I want to ask you, have you ever pushed your life aside for friends, family, and work? Hid your light under a bushel, never allowing it to shine? Maybe even worried now that it's too late and you cannot find, and that mountain just seems so high to climb. And then worry again that you will run out of time. Well, this is what I do. Yeah, I am working with women that have imposter syndrome, that actually have put their life on the hold for so long. And now they've got to a place where, oh my goodness, it's like they're running out of time and they're running out of steam. So what I do is really start with a process of bringing together everything so that they can have a sovereign life where their heart, their mind, their soul works together. I'm so pleased to be here because we're going to talk about one of my favorite subjects, which is mindset.
Yeah, and I love what you're doing, Shireen, because I think that is something that the world, every single person in the world needs the most. Like, people are so disconnected from themselves, and yes, and you call it imposter syndrome, I just call it a mask. People just basically lose themselves, and it's also important, especially now when we live in the age of overload of information, and there is so much out there, and people focus on so many things and get disconnected even more, which causes a lot of stress, which causes a lot of disease, and people actually do not have positive mindset because stress is like 90% the main cause of unhappiness in today's world, and people losing themselves really to not only physical health but also mental health. So can you just explain what this topic means to you and why you're so passionate about helping others to find positive mindset? What's your experience with it? And
yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, it's quite a big topic, isn't it? It's a massive one, but I think what really you mentioned the word disconnect, and the disconnect is what is caused by stress. And as we really realize that stress is 90% of pretty much everything. But the thing is, stress is to do with a perceived kind of stress. It's not necessarily a physical stress. It's our perception of our feeling of our ability to deal with it. That's what causes the stress, the capability or the belief that we can't, and that stresses us out. So the most important thing then, obviously, is something that we're not paying attention to, which is our mindset. Because if it is our mindset that is deciding for us, then that's the filter through which we're going to be looking at everything. Yeah. And if we didn't have a mind, we'd probably be quite happy just, being like an animal, chewing all day and not being too stressed out. But we do have a mind because that's who we are as human beings. And I think that the really important thing is to understand that our happiness is really, in essence, everything to do with how we create from our mind. What's the world or the law that we're paying attention to? And the law or the universal law is that we look at the world through our mind. What we see, we perceive to be real and true. Yeah. So whether we perceive it through what we hear, there are different ways of perceptions. We can hear things, we can feel things, but how we interpret that is what becomes the decider for us. And it'll either give us happiness or it'll give us stress in some way. So for me, I woke up with this mnemonic: happiness is how a powerful person simultaneously interrupts negative and installs positive or new experiences super successfully. Yeah. So we have to have a novel experience to come in when we have this negative one. We need to replace it. And the degree to which we can do that is going to help us be successful in whatever it is that we do. So yeah, for me, that's that. I think from we were talking a little bit earlier. You were saying that you're doing a different course, which is very spiritually motivated, but it's still the same. And we talked earlier on about saying that in actual fact, we're realizing that now medicine or science is catching up with what with what the ancients were telling us in the first place, which is so rare. And really part of it is that the ancients are always talking about intention. They're even talking about pre-intention before we create the intention, yeah? Which is interesting that the intention's already made outside our awareness into awareness. And sorry, I just realized my phone is going off. But the thing is, what's really interesting is that when we look on MRIs, we can see that already in our brain, choices are being made without our awareness. So intention is pre-conscious intention, which I find really, really amazing. So, and this is all said in the ancients. Yeah, they all tell us that there is the space before when intention comes into being, and then we direct the flow of whatever that energy is going to be. Yeah, so I get really excited when I hear that someone like you is doing a beautiful, powerful spiritual course, but it's also validating a lot of the science.
Yeah, exactly. And it's when you mentioned that topic as well, I got really excited because I was very curious what you're going to say, and I was so relieved and happy actually that here that everything that you say, it's aligned with what I'm teaching, because I'm so committed as well to the knowledge that I'm gaining. Because as William, because my course is from William Whitecloud. He's a wonderful author. He's a wonderful mentor and coach. He's just incredible. And he always says, that's regarding to what you just said before, that your focus creates reality. So what you focus on basically becomes your reality, but what you think you're focused on, you are not focused on. And that is because a lot of people lack self-awareness, basically. And that because people think that they're doing the right thing, they're doing these visualizations, then think of being successful, being millionaire, being positive, but nothing is really changing and happening because they don't understand that this goes much deeper than that. There are layers. To it. And yeah, we can kind of today maybe you can explain people basically how does it work. That will be wonderful. That this pre-intention, that's all it matters. So people can truly change and shift Because otherwise we're just running around in circles and nothing really changes. And there's a lot of coaches and gurus actually that are teaching that in today's world, but they don't go deep enough. They share 50% truth because they maybe don't have that understanding just yet, basically.
Yeah, and I do think there are a couple of really good ones that are giving us the truth, and maybe we just don't want to hear it as well. Yeah, because it's outside and it seems to be disconnected from what it is we so want. And the problem is when we want in a way that's not so helpful, then we're wanting in the way that a child wants, and we're not wanting in a way that is from our wise inner deep soul wants. And that's where we go into that conflict, and what we kind of do is sell our soul out for wanting the desire. Now, there's nothing wrong with wanting to be rich, don't get me wrong here, but it's really about what is rich going to be. What is it going to do? How does it serve you as a being? How does it serve the world as a being? And really, we are here, yes, as an individual aspect of the Creator. We're here for a short lifetime. We're not here, if we look at the grand scheme of things, our imprint is just an aspect of this big ginormity. And I was watching Brian Cox on TV the other night, and it was really interesting because he was talking about the end of the universe. And he was talking about when the universe gets all cold and everything just slows down. And he said, I'm laughing, but it actually puts everything into perspective. That actually, you may want to be famous, you may want to be this, but it's all going to pass. So there really is something about living in this moment, in the present, and being able to live fully embodied in that present moment. That really is all that it is required, because in that moment, you get to experience the truth of who you are. And I think when we're busy trying to be everything else, and as you're saying, Nadia, which was interesting, is that they're telling us we must do this, how many customers to get, how many this, how many that. What they're not looking at is, how do you learn to be your authentic self? How do you learn to not sell your soul? How do you learn to truly, truly, truly know that you are okay, lovable, perfect, all of these things, all on your own, and there's nothing in you that isn't enough? And I think when we can get to that, then there'll be no dissonance between our higher self and the self that wants more, because then the desire will cleave to that desire. So it will break away from all that isn't needed to fulfill the purpose of why we're here. And we're here to serve the purpose, not to serve ourselves, but the soul's purpose. And I think when we get unhappy and things don't change is because we're not paying attention to the soul's purpose, which is part and parcel of where the intention comes up. Yeah. And so we don't listen and pay attention enough so that the intention can arise.
Exactly. We are just too caught up thinking, overthinking, listening to advice that has nothing to do with what we truly want. And if people actually knew themselves on deeper level before they make a decision to sign up for the course or whatever, to spend money on some kind of training and setting up businesses, they would save so much time, basically, because when you know what you want, when you know what do you stand for, what is it that you actually want to create for yourself in your life, it would be so much easier for you to make a decision, make a choice what you actually need. Just wasting your time. And what you said, oh gosh, what was it? So important to be in a present moment, because only then we can actually realize and learn about ourselves. Who are we, we actually need. So yeah, there's so many wonderful things, basically. that people don't realize. And you know, I wanted to ask you this wonderful question, and it's gone.
It'll come back.
Yeah, I'm sure it will come back. But you know, I'm just loving this chat because that is the truth. Basically, that you know people need to hear, and hopefully you know people that need to hear it well. As one of my mentors say, the truth is only for those with eyes to see and ears to hear.
Yeah.
Basically, not everyone is ready to take that responsibility. Basically, because as you said before as well, people do not understand that we are here. What we're supposed to create it has nothing to do with us. Basically, we're just kind of vessels to kind of to create it, and that's it. And because we engage our ego and our insecurities and worthiness, we don't follow our heart, and we disconnect basically from the purpose, because we think it's all about us when it really isn't. And when we learn that, when we remove the ego from doing what we're supposed to do, we just fulfill ourselves and our basically our soul. And also what you just mentioned before, I just want to add quickly, and I'm just going to ask you this question, is that a lot of people, because they don't know themselves, they have this imposter syndrome. They disconnect from their values, from their heart, and they do things against their inner heart, basically their inner values. And what happens is they create a lot of stress and disease, and that's what happens really, because they're really working against themselves. They do things that they shouldn't be doing, what their heart doesn't want them to do. And their life is not what they want.
Yeah. And I think we just got so many people that are in this world like that. You know, there are more people in this world that are in that place than there are that are in the space of being a little more, probably more creative in the sense of intentionally creative. So, but, you know, it's something that can be learned. I think what's really important is to realize that, and, you know, I've been kind of looking at a lot of stuff with trauma, because trauma, I believe, is at the heart of everything. And it doesn't mean that you've had a serious trauma in your life. It could just mean that a mother or father was sick and that shifted a dynamic, or you had a new sibling come in and less attention was paid on you. And, you know, there are all sorts of things that go on that, and you're too young to truly understand. All these things we make meaning of. Yeah, we make meaning of. And what happens is, in this original first trauma, when we're little, we know how to say no. We know how to be ourselves. We know how to spit the food out. And we know how to say, no, we want you to come here now. We know how to make that noise. And then after a while, we conform. We get conditioned in some way. And what happens is we're not allowed to be ourselves, because children, you know, in my case, children are seen and not heard. Children must behave in this way and not that. So that was kind of like the upbringing that I had, which was really very strict and in a way emotionally cruel. But there was something really important, is that because we are, as humans, we only thrive in connection and thrive in a belonging sense, and thrive. We want to survive. And so we would rather believe that we are bad. We would rather believe that we have to do something else. We'd rather sell our soul out in order to, we'll sacrifice ourselves in order to have the connection. Yeah, in order to have the connection. And that's where we become the imposter. We start living through the filter of that imposter. And sometimes we get to be maybe an artist, or we get to do things where we just are fully in ourselves as we grow up. And those are the times when we touch back to our spirit, we touch back to our soul, we touch back. And when we touch back, we realize where we are and where we aren't. And that causes us a lot of discord. Yeah. And that's where we get hold of the addictions, because that's where we've had this experience, this absolute experience of having the oneness. And we think in that moment it's about having had something like, a drug, or we've had, or something that sex or whatever, something that may make us believe that it's that. We forget what it was that went there in the first place. And so we lose out, and we disconnect from that truth. So if you think about, I know with a lot of people that I, with smoking, I used to just say, well, the one thing that people forget is that to smoke, you have to breathe. You have to take this big breath. And the moment you take the big breath, guess what? You relax. Maybe that's what the smoking's trying to get you to do, to relax. But you don't think, because you do the breath so automatically, guess what? You do it so automatically. Yeah, you forget that it's not the cigarette that does it. So then you forget that actually the cigarette is, the desire for the cigarette is your soul saying, take a breath. Go outside, take a breath. Take a breath before you talk to somebody. Bring online the sage, bring online the wise part. Yeah. So that's going to bring in a little bit about the mindset stuff, and trying to link that to what that's all about. So, yeah. Is there something you wanted to ask before I go into that?
Yeah, no, that's wonderful. That's what a great analogy with smoking, definitely. And just regarding to what you said before, I think regarding other people and mindset, it's so much easier for majority of people to sustain negative mindset, because as one of my mentors says, it's so much easier to sink than to swim, because swimming, maintaining positive mindset takes an effort and work, and it's not comfortable, and that's where a lot of people are too lazy basically to do it. That's why I think this conversation is so important. So let's share some wisdom, basically, and what simple action can we do basically that we maintain this positive pattern.
I wonder, first, I just want to, I can see that Nomsa's on, and she's also been saying, oh, so true. So thank you, Nomsa, for being here.
Where can you see it? I cannot see
it's coming up on my screen here. I've got my screen open full, so it's coming up. And so Nomsa's on. So I had to put my glasses on so I could see. So she's saying hello to us, which is thank you. We're meant to maintain positive mindset. Yes. So yeah, I want to just really just address one thing. Is I inherently don't think people are lazy. I think they're just not connected to the truth of what they need to do. And so because they don't have that connection, it doesn't pull them. And what they're feeling is more this push rather than this pull. And we don't want to be pushed. Nobody wants to be pushed, yeah? So, but if we have something that's pulling us because we want it, then that's a very, very different, a different way of looking at stuff. So from my perspective, no one's inherently lazy intentionally. I think there's something driving it. But the thing, what's really important is that laziness is just showing that there's the disconnect. That's really what it's doing. It's just saying there's a disconnect. And then what it is about looking at, well, okay, it may be so overwhelming to change a behavior that in actual fact, we have to do things in little stages. So for example, when someone's on Prozac, you don't just take them off the tablet. Yeah. If they've had, say, 100 milligrams or 200 milligrams of Prozac, you don't take them off, because if you do, their whole system is just going to go awry. What you want to do is you want to fool the body that it's changing, that the body thinks, oh, nothing's happening. Oh, just a little bit, but nothing more. So you literally want to educate the body, or do it in a way that the body doesn't go into a shocked state. So you will start with, say, for example, if you want to come down a little bit, you might start very slowly. You might start, say, if they're having 200, you might give them for a couple of in the week. You might go 200 and then go down to 180, then go back up, 180, go back up, and do it like that. And then the next week, you might actually go 180, then 190. Do you see what I mean? So you slowly drop the baseline. So how does that work with mindset stuff? Well, we want to do stuff that's going to be slow and easy. If it's slow and easy, we're going to do it. And we also need to do it at times where we are going to have natural breaks. So remember, we talked about the cigarette, where we have the desire for a cigarette. And if we think about what was the desire for the cigarette, was to take a break. Yeah. So it's really about looking at where in your life are these natural breaks or these natural moments where you can actually do a tiny, tiny task that's easy and fun to do. And just understand that you're only doing the task because what the purpose of the task is actually activating a particular part of your brain. Because when we start to focus in, the fact we focus in changes the way our brain state is. And it also means we move out of, because there's a lot of evidence to show that the moment we just pay attention to something and really focus in, we actually start to breathe nice and gently. We start to breathe very comfortably. And when we do that, what happens is we're already going into that parasympathetic response. But if you're actually focusing, remember we talked earlier on about everything is in the intention or the activation of the creative force. By actually doing that, by focusing, we are intending. We're activating an intention. And that tells the brain we want to bring online the part of us that is that wise sage or that wise advisor or that higher self, some people will call it. You can call it your creator or God self if that's what you want. But it doesn't matter. It's the part of us that seems to be far bigger. And, it's the expansive self that is our self. But you only need to start off doing, say, a moment. So one example could be just to breathe in and out. Just gently breathe in and out. Go put something on your timer and just say, okay, before I get up in the morning, I'm just going to breathe for a moment. Or I can just sit with my fingers like this and I can just allow myself to feel the ridges for 2 minutes before you get out of bed. That's enough. That's enough to bring online your wise part. Neurons that fire together wire together. So the more you do it, so if you do it for 2 minutes, and there's a saying that you need to be actually longer than 45 for something like a minute and a half to actually get the neural connection. So your 2 minutes will kind of safely cover you. So if you do that for 2 minutes, and then at tea time, when you would normally have a break, just while you're waiting for the kettle to boil, just do either some breathing or just rub your fingers and just kind of feel the ridges. Just consciously taking that intention forward actually allows your brain to increase in neural connection. So this allows you to be able to do this. And if you give yourself a certain amount during the day, so if you are doing something every 3 hours, this really magnifies the effect in your brain. And if you're doing that consistently for 63 days, which is actually the days where we're actually starting to grow a pattern, then we have that situation where we're more likely to continue and to get even better value from it. So yeah, that's what we want. We want to find a time that we're going to have frequency. So we need to have repetition. We need to have duration. So 2 minutes is kind of like the minimum amount. And most people can do 2 minutes every 3 hours. It's not long. And there is intensity. So focus. The focus is the intensity. So the more you focus, the more, and for the longer you focus, and the more frequent you focus, the more you actually activate that part of the brain that is the part that is our wise part, the part that is the visionary part. Yeah. So we talked about the law earlier on, and the law is that everything we see, we perceive. Everything we perceive, we believe. So the more you start focusing in, the more you start to recognize the power that you start to have, because you start to notice more and you can tune out less. You know, you can tune out other stuff that's getting in the way of your focus.
Wow, beautiful. Yes, and I think that Dandapani explained this the power of intention and focus in one word, in one sentence, very easily. He said, "Where your attention goes, energy flows."
Exactly.
Basically,
Exactly.
that's exactly that. Yeah, Janet. Yeah, where
Yeah.
so guys,
Synopsis says, I call it God, that internal voice. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And I really love what you said about to keep the positive mindset, and it's to break it down in small little steps. It's so powerful and so real, because when, of course, our ego, our mind gets overwhelmed so easily, and we just kind of get afraid, and we procrastinate and don't do anything at the end, and we don't deliver the end results. So important. And this wonderful Chinese philosopher said once, the journey of 1,000 miles starts with one single step. That's basically what it is. And you know, it's so powerful to mention that. And I also thank you for explaining the laziness thing. Yeah, of course, I didn't mean that people are intentionally lazy, but yeah, the way you explain it, it's so powerful, because it is scary and overwhelming to follow your heart. And you know, people procrastinate not because they're lazy, but because they're afraid to really take action, hard-driven action, because it's not comfortable at the beginning, at least.
And you know, remember I talked about the connection. So the reason we don't want to show up in a way where we look less than is because we've learned as a child, we valued our self-opinion on that. And in a way, we learned that perfection was necessary. Perfection got us glory in some way. Okay, so when you're a good girl, when you're a good girl and you get praised for it, well, you try and do more. And also, if you have a sibling that's kind of not so good, then you're even better, you know, so it builds your self-esteem even more. Now, we don't do this intentionally, but it happens because we think that that is what our parents really want. But actually, that's not really what they want, because we don't ask them. We don't say, do you just love me for who I am? We don't ask that question. We never ask it. I just want you to love me for who I am, whether I do this or whether I do that. I remember my father said something to me, which was really, and I say this to a lot of my clients, when they kind of say, you know, I think I failed my children. And like my dad said this to me when my brother was causing a lot of trouble, and he was really not doing so well, and my mother was in hospital sick. And I said to him, well, Dad, has he ever gone to jail? And he said, no. I said, has he killed anybody? He said, no. Has he cheated anybody that you know of, that he's hurt someone intentionally? And he said, no. So I said, and you know, does he take care of his family and make sure that there's food on the table, even if it means asking you? He said, yes. So I said, tell me how this person how you failed. Tell me how you failed. You didn't fail. Yeah? If you failed, he would be in jail. He would be one of these people that would be in a really bad place. You didn't fail him. And it's really important, I think, is just recognizing that even though children are where they are, and it's really looking at where do we fail and where do we not. And I truly believe that if you at least have an ability where your children are pretty much coming to see you, at least they want to come and be with you, you haven't failed. If anything, you've taught them what love is about. You've taught them how to be more. And the chances are you're seeing them as they are and accepting them as they are. Yeah.
Oh yes, like conscious parenting is so important. Like, and all the child needs, it's a love, basically from the parents in some ways. Of course, we need that energy as children from our parents, and that's more than enough. For a child.
And you know, the thing is, that's what you're doing when you become this conscious being. where you step, when you take care of your mindset and you start activating this wise part of you, you become the conscious parent. But not just the conscious parent of you, you become the conscious parent of everybody that you're with, in actual fact, because you are automatically present in that moment, and you'll ask the questions. You'll ask the questions and you will see everybody. And I think Paul Roger always talks about unconscious regard. And unconscious regard is being able to see someone for who they are with no condition, with no expectation, but just see them as they are, but also see them as potential. See that they have this potential to be who they want to be, and to facilitate that in whatever way you can. So yeah, and I think as conscious parents, it's not about just giving to them, but it's about recognizing how to help them manage all the emotions that come up, that they'll struggle with. Yeah, and then that's where they make the wrong meaning.
Exactly. And it's so important because a lot of my friends are parents, and I can see they don't treat their children like children. Sometimes they project their own beliefs and try to create mini version of themselves, and they're not more of a guide but kind of a boss and manager basically of a child. And if what you said is so beautiful, if we could see our children for who they are and allow them to be themselves, that would be just the most empowering thing a parent can do for a child, just to allow a child to flourish naturally, organically, without our control, basically, and protection, because obviously we try just to protect them and tell them what we think is best for children. But that's why conscious parenting is so important. Right. So, but let's come back to mindset, because you mentioned before about the 63 days. I'm really, really curious. What's that about? Can you explain the difference? Because obviously there's this myth that you need 21 days of repetition to learn a pattern, to rewire your brain. But you mentioned that it's actually not true. It's 63 days. We need 63 days to actually form a pattern. Can you explain?
Yes, I mean, there's a lot of neuroscience that's showing this and showing that in actual fact, when you start to, so for example, when you start to change a pattern, now there is a sequence of events in changing a pattern. If you want to change it systematically, it does require you to do that tap, 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 tapping in a very, very systematic way. And the first thing is you need to have the intention, which we talked about. And with an intention, it really is about finding out everything. So it's about investigating, and it's going in and looking at stuff and gaining insights, all these ins, which means go inside. Go inside. The insight, investigate. It's really interesting, isn't it? So insight is the biggest aspect of the first bit for an intention, because we can't make an intention when we don't know the location. We don't know where to go. So we need to find out more information on that. But that looking, that exploring, that not going into the criticizing aspect, but just going into the place of, okay, I want to change a behavior. I don't know yet how to do it, but what I can do is research it. I can research it because, and I really want people to hear this really now, is that you can only do you. You can only do you. So you have to find the pattern that's going to work for you, the regime that is going to work for you, right? So be creative. Have a look and try on a few of the different strategies. So, for example, when I did my when I did losing weight, I went and I looked around what kind of sort of things I needed before I would even think about deciding what I was going to choose. And I kind of looked at, well, calorie counting. I looked at all different kinds of diets, and I realized they weren't for me. They weren't going to fit in with my lifestyle. They weren't going to fit in, and I didn't know how I would be able to do that. But eventually, after just really honestly looking, an idea sprang up. And that's where, when we've done a pre-intention of looking, what happens is the intention starts to come up and become stronger. We have more activation. And it's that activation that on the brain causes, it takes about 21 days for us to be starting to do activating enough that we get this kind of what we call a neuronal bump. And a neuronal bump is where we've got enough energy in that place that's going to give us enough orientation to look for new ideas, new creative things, to see things. So if you say, for example, want to buy a car, a green car, how many green cars will you see? Lots. All of a sudden, you see so many of them. It's only because you've set the intention you want a green car. All of a sudden, you see these things. And because the brain is noticing, it's firing those neurons. So that's where that kind of thing sort of works. And then the next thing is we've got to start communicating those ideas to ourselves. So we have to do some self-talk. And once you're doing some self-talk, you're getting this feedback loop. Now, most of us as children, we learn through speaking and then hearing, speaking and hearing, when we have this sort of visual space cap and we go back and forward, back and forward, back and forward. And often that's how we learn. We learn through that repetition of this kind of visual auditory kind of loop. And then what happens is you start to feel it starts to permeate and you go, oh, this feels more true, because now you're beginning to listen to what's starting to resonate for you. Remember, with the moment we start to really connect to the material or whatever we want to do, we start to resonate with it even more. And it starts to become true. And when we do that, we can then start to begin the idea of making a commitment to maintaining this behavior. And in order for that to happen, you need to be doing the action, or at least having seen the action, tried a few steps before you can say, this is the one I'm going to take. This is the one I'm going to do. Because when you do that, you will have enough evidence to say, yeah, this works. This will work for me. That might work for somebody else, but this works for me. And then you can start setting up an action plan. And only then do you really set an action plan. So we talked earlier on about people just going on courses. If you remember, this is really a little bit like this story where actually, how do you choose the right course for you? Yeah. You choose the right courses when you really start to pay attention in a very specific way. And once you start paying that attention, what happens is you get the resonance and it starts to feel right. And you start to go, I'm more a lot of money, but this still feels right for me. Okay, can I make it? Can I pay for that? Yeah, okay. So you start becoming creative, yeah? And then all of a sudden, you start to come into an action plan and you find a plan that works for you. And that's when you start to feel more energy, more neural patterning. And that's when you're about 40. And normally that's when you're really into sort of like the part of the 40 days already. But what's happening is this neuronal bump that's been like a little pimple is now growing into something that looks like that. It's starting to grow and look like a nerve. And when it starts to grow and it looks like a nerve, it's taking form. And so you've still got those sort of now you're starting to go. You haven't yet completely got onto the action in the sense that you've got it permanently in place, because you still might be slipping and sliding and slipping and sliding and still finding your way. But the moment you start to really become congruent with the path, you've kind of put everything in place and you're just starting to go, and you're having less hits than and more successes. That's when it starts to become closer to the 60 mark. And when it's there, you're already on your way. And then it's starting to become part of your neurology. Now, the 63 days is only going to grow a very tiny bunch. But if you've got a whole lot of neurons and you're growing tiny little bumps on each of those, they're going to make connections. Yeah. So each time you get a little moment where you get a little success and you come back on track, that really galvanizes the the hormones and the energy gets bigger around that. So you start to knit more and more together, and that just means that you get more and more connection. So, of course, 63 days is still very new, yeah. So you still need to go back over it and do more. So the Buddha said something which is really interesting. He said, if you do something for 3 months, you're more likely to do it for 6. If you do something for 6 months, you're likely to do it for a year. If you do it for a year, you'll do it for 3. And if you do it for 3, you'll probably get to do it for 7. Because after 7 years, your body has totally changed. And we all know that 7 years, our body, the neurons actually, they grow, they change. You get a complete new set in 7 years. So that makes sense. And so the new neurons that you come are in the new pattern, not in the old. So it's interesting that the Buddha, over how many thousand years ago, knew this truth. We are only finding the truth now. So there's absolute truth about that. So the most important aspect is realizing that how do we do this? How do we do this? Is really about doing these small little steps. As you said, that Chinese proverb. To do 1,000 miles, we've got to take one step and just focus on the one step. Because if we focus on that big mile ahead, it's going to be really hard. It's going to be overwhelming. So to maintain a mindset is really to know it's one step at a time. So when we're in this moment, we're present, and our little lovely saboteur comes in, we've just got to be able to say, I know you're there. Goodbye. I'm focusing here. I can talk to you later, but I'm gonna focus here. And what you're doing is you're making a choice. You're making a choice in that moment. And the more you make that choice, the longer the distance between the voice coming in and the voice coming in and you being able to do what it is that you want. So you spend more time in the process of having a good mindset that's serving you as opposed to one that isn't.
Wow, that was super interesting. Like, I obviously never heard before about the process of creating a new nerve. That was very cool. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. And yeah, that's yeah. So guys, 21 days, it's a myth. It's not enough. And of course, if you think about it, if you were following your old bad habits for 30 years, imagine it's not going to take you 21 days just to shift from that, sabotaging behaviors. It takes longer, of course, because you need to shift the power of your choice by using the will, determination, and discipline, basically, into this new wonderful choices and rewiring your brain, basically, because that's what it is. You're kind of manipulating, creating a new brain in your body, which obviously in your head, which is gonna take time. It cannot happen just overnight. It does require effort and passion and attention. That's wonderful. Can you just explain people what is this saboteur that you mentioned? Can you just define the saboteur and how does it get in the way, and how can we deal with it?
Yeah. I mean, saboteurs are. Remember, the saboteurs are. We see them now as saboteurs. All right. We think of. A lot of us have all got one, which is called the judge. Yeah, we all have an internal judge somewhere along the line that stops us. All right. But at one point, that judge actually was there to be a solution to a problem. Right. So we brought this judge in when we were younger in order to conform, to shut us down, to stop our innate essence being what it needs to be, because remember, we were choosing the connection over ourself. That's the key. So when we fear connection, when we fear that people are going to see us and think we're less, and we feel that we're going to be left out, or we feel that, oh my God, like, little women, FOMO, boy, oh boy, I've experienced that badly. Or we sit there and we feel resentful or angry or jealous because, hey, the attention's not us. That's really sitting there because that's part of our ancient pattern of needing to be safe. And in order to be safe, we need to feel loved and belong. Yeah. So the judge is there to say, if you do that, you're going to lose the connection. You're going to lose the connection. You're going to lose the connection. And so what you do is you go into that old pattern of the fight, flight, freeze, shutdown response, and you choose to connect and not disconnect. So the judge is really there to do that. So it's a solution to that old part of our brain, but it isn't helpful to us. It isn't helpful to us. Now, there's nothing different by actually looking at something and being discerning and looking at it and going, I wonder. If you start going, I wonder what it would be like if that happened or that shifted. What happens is you move into curiosity and you move into a space which is very different. So the judge actually sits, and the judge becomes useful then, because then the judge kind of sits on another side of you. So maybe an example would be is think about the last time you had the judge. Can you remember the last time you were judging yourself? Think about for a moment, where did you hear it? What kind of, do you hear it more on the left or the right side of you? Where do you hear it?
I definitely hear it on my right side.
Okay, so in my case, I often hear mine on my left, but some people hear it on their right. So everybody's different. So you said it's more on your right, and what does it say?
You're not good enough.
Okay,
You still need to educate yourself, read more books.
Exactly. So that judge. Now, obviously, that you can see the intention. The intention of that would be, go and do some more work, go and work harder, go and do that. So there's an intention, but it's not getting you anywhere, because what it means is you're not getting out doing a job, doing what you really need to do. Yeah. So, but the thing is, the judge isn't necessarily kind. Yeah, because we often create a judge that's very mean. So if you could just for a moment imagine what the judge looks like, what does your judge look like?
A very strict, bad teacher with a little cane.
Okay, so a bad teacher with a cane that's beating you up. Oh my God. Okay, so one of the things that can help us is having an awareness of it. All right, by having an awareness that it's there, and we give it a symbolic representation, allows us to now work with it, because now it's not something we can't see. It's part of our imagination. It is. Yeah, it's a part of our thought process. So, but it's a thought process that's doing a job, which isn't helpful, because it would be better that it encouraged us than doing what it's doing. So you've got a choice. You can, my judge is Cruella de Vil. And when I hear her, I go, you are being cruel to me. Stop it. I'm not going to listen to you. I'm going to focus here. I know that you have an intention, but not right now. So I can, and then I start to laugh, because I can see Cruella. All right. And I go, yeah. I'm okay. She got beaten. The 101 Dalmatians they got home safe. I'm going to bring all my babies home. So for me, that makes me feel joyful. But for you, it may be that teacher, you give that teacher a name. It may be a teacher that you remember. But what you need to do in that moment in time is say, not now. I can see you. Go away. And you can literally move your hand and flick them away. Because the act of actually doing that is enough in the brain to create that movement that will shift her. So you don't even have to do it in the sense of, oh, work your mental shit. No, just do that and you watch. They'll move. Because remember, intention is the movement of a hand. We intend with our hand. So you can do that. It's a really clear way of demarcating power. When we do
Wow, that's very useful. Thank you. It's I think it's very important, like for our ego to perceive, to understand such a big things, like in such a way that it's using our imagination basically, and talking to our mind like it was a child, and imagining all this and breaking things down.
Well, they do say in order to enter the kingdom of heaven, we have to be like a child. What did they mean? And what do they mean by heaven? Well, heaven is here. It's not up in the sky. Heaven is just another aspect of when we move into the next dimension, really. We're moving from one space to another. But we can only truly enter. And heaven, I believe heaven is on earth. If heaven is on earth, we are earth. So heaven must be the way we manage and create our earth. And if we manage that, then it's always going to have a spill out to the rest of the earth, isn't it? Because if we're managing ourselves, we will manage the earth. So I kind of always see it in relation, because we are part of a system. We're not on its own. So yeah, for me, that's really where it is. So we have many saboteurs, not just one, but we have a main one. The main one is the judge. We have a procrastinator. We have an avoider. Yeah, we have a different saboteur that might be the controller. Right. So nurses are very good controllers. So a controller is part. And when you move from a place, like when I sort of grew up not feeling in control, I went into nursing and it gave me control because I was in a place of power. Interesting. So I had to learn how to not be in that place and use control as the way forward. So we have a controller, we have a stickler, like a perfectionist, we have lots of little ones. So you start to get to know which ones are your ones and which ones are playing predominantly in your life, and give them little personalities. And when you notice, the more you create like a child, the more you create this world around you, the more you're able to manage it, the more you can manipulate it and move it. Yeah. And you can navigate space and you can create around you so that you get to live your heaven on earth.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. Such a great advice. It's, inner work is everything, basically, because otherwise we won't be able to express ourselves ever, and we never, get to that blissful point of happiness and being positive, really, because it just takes inner work and learning about yourself. And sharing such a wonderful techniques, simple techniques, basically, how to break it all down and really learn about ourselves and tackle basically this saboteurs, this unconscious behavioral pattern in such a easy way for our brain to perceive and actually take instant action.
Basically. Thank you.
Yeah, so maybe just to summarize, it's because we out of time. How would you summarize it in few beautiful sentences? How to maintain this positive mindset and not
I think the thing is you are the creator, you are the creation. That is the key. And the only way to enter the keys to the kingdom is to actually live in that imagination. And what you imagine becomes true. So let yourself see those saboteurs and move them. Yeah. Give them a name, move them on, and just say, not right now. I know what you want, but not right now. This is where I'm going. This is what I want to do. And the more you do that, the more control you get, and the more you actually grow those parts in your brain. But also the interesting thing, the other aspect, is that you also clean and restore your brain at the same time. So that's even better, because now you get a clean brain at the end of it too. which is
Probably more
wonderful.
than just clean brain, the whole body.
Yes.
It's like a mental body cleans, mind and
Exactly.
body. Beautiful.
Exactly.
Thank you so much. What a wonderful talk. So yeah, thank you guys for listening. Hope you find it useful. I'm sure definitely you find it useful. Please join our channel, Ngozi Talk Show. We share wonderful wisdom information every single day at 1 p.m. UK time. So take care, everyone. Have a magic day and see you tomorrow.
Thank you. Bye-bye.